Today's lecture is kind of, it's a true hybrid. If this lecture is a hybrid between Zoom and live, Morocco represents a hybrid of everything we've looked at so far. So far, we've looked at Islamic countries, Arabic countries that have Islamicized people. And we've looked at countries like Turkey that were not Arab and yet had become Islamic. In Morocco, we see this really interesting kind of hybrid in which the Arab invasion didn't succeed in Arabizing the people totally. There was a very large, and still is, native population that resisted this process and yet somehow still became somewhat Arabized. And in so doing, they've lost a lot of their native language. Their Arabic is not perfect, neither is their French, but they're still clinging to this identity, this ancient indigenous people of which they belong to. And along with these indigenous people known as the Berber, the Jews are an inseparable part of this process. So going all the way back to 200, actually 500 BCE, you have Jewish presence in Morocco. And there's a question which we'll come to in a moment as to just how strong this presence was felt, just how intermingled they truly were, and as to whether the Jews themselves should be or could be considered Amazigh or Berber in their own right. And we're going to solve this question, I believe, thoroughly as we go through this lecture together and this discussion. So my first question, well, we always have our Arabic expression, don't we? And we have to do this together. I cannot begin a lecture concerning the Arab people and without inserting some Arabic. So today's is easy. There's how many of you know the word in Hebrew for leg? Anybody? One person? Regel. Regel. So the word for Arabic for leg is rijl. So this word is rijli, which means my leg. Rijli, ala, rij, lak. My leg on your leg. So everybody say together with me, rijli, ala, rijlak. Now say it without looking down. Rijli, ala, rijlak. So my leg on your leg, which means, like in good old Naomi and Ruth style, it means wherever you go, I will follow. I'm with you all the way. So I thought that was a nice way to begin this lecture, a nice positive note. And I'm gonna start by questioning our image of what Moroccan people, what they look like, what represents Moroccans in our minds. Is this Morocco? Our lecture is Jewish life in the Atlas Kingdom. Is this the image you have of Morocco when you think of Morocco? I'm just asking you.
Audience, you're welcome to participate.
Just thoughts. Yes, yes, no, nodding heads, maybe. What? Say that again. Someone just said yes, but not. So in fact, that's the point. Thank you for saying that, actually, because in fact, these are Amazigh, Berber Jews, and these represent the oldest known Jewish people that lived in Morocco, that intermingled and became part of the fabric of their civilization. So I'll continue on this theme in just a moment. But the question is, how do we refer to the Jews of Morocco in general? We have Mizrahim. Are they Mizrahim? What does Mizrahim mean for you? Okay, from the Arab world, thank you. Are the Jews of Morocco just from the Arab world? We've just said they weren't, right? They were there before. And then Jews came in from the Arab world around what year? 700 Common Era. But what happened in the 1400s? Sephardim came and also became part of their society. So in other words, does the word Mizrahim fit? So the answer is there's two names we have for them. A trick question. The people that were known as indigenous, like the ones who live there, who've always lived there, are called the Toshavim, the ones who've always lived in the land of Morocco. Megurashim means the expelled ones, refers to the Jews from the Iberian Peninsula some who came after 1492, but some who came even slightly before because they were already worried about the oppression they were suffering from the Christians. So they, and as you can imagine, although there's never been a question of the halachic status of the Jews of Morocco from any time period, the socioeconomic difference of the Spanish Jews who were educated, they were poets, literary, also economically savvy, spoke multiple languages, versus the Berber Jews who had lived there since time immemorial, spoke only Amazigh, the local language, and had become just a regular people. They were shoemakers, they were, people, you basically handicrafts, jewelers, artisans, but all the regular crafts that we know in a regular society from all spheres. So obviously, or I don't know obviously, but the Sfaradim looked down on the Toshavim, and this existed for hundreds of years, although now they're intermingled in Morocco, the couple of thousand that are left, and in the Moroccan world, in Israel and abroad. And those that refer to themselves aren't even sure usually who they are, although you can figure it out within a couple of conversations with their parents or grandparents. You can just see if they speak Ladino, which is the Spanish language, or if they speak some version of Berber, of Amazigh, or they have a few words. So here's a picture I took in the Atlas Mountains a couple of years ago. I was caught in a snowstorm, and I took a picture of this lovely Amazigh Berber man. He did not speak any Arabic. He didn't speak any French. He only spoke Amazigh, and I really had he served me teamers. Our bus was stuck in the mountains for a few hours, and we had to get dug out of a snowstorm. And it was a wonderful adventure. And who is this guy, everyone? You recognize him? Who is it? Same guy? Let's look one more time. Here and here. Yeah. So this guy is my wife's grandfather, who was a Berber Arab, Berber Jew, I mean, he's with my daughter here in this picture. And I love tricking people with this photo, just to show that our image of what a Jew is, and he's thoroughly Jewish. He knows his Talmud, he knows his Chumah, he knows it all inside out. He can discuss with me. And it's something that actually awakens us as to our assumptions and how they should always be challenged, and how we should always challenge our own as well. And now when we look at the Amazigh culture, how long they've been there, these Amazigh people, they've been there since 1184. This is from the throne of Ramses II, actually. So this is a depiction, and there's many depictions of people from North Africa who are the Amazigh visiting the courts of the pharaohs. So he's coming as an emissary. Other times they're coming as prisoners, bound, kneeling. But in this case, he's a dignitary. And again, is this your image of Morocco? That's my question. Or is this more what we think of when we think of Morocco? And the question is, some of you are shaking your heads, but the question is why do we have images? Why does something jump in your brain right away? And of course, it's what we're exposed to. Both the media that we're exposed to, both the interviews, we hear the monarch, the king of Morocco speaking, we hear his advisor speaking. This is what we hear, and this is what we see. When you go to Morocco, your eyes will be bedazzled by so many different types of images of different cultures and different foods and different smells. Everywhere you turn, it's something different. It's really, really hard to make sense of it, and it's much easier to be steered in a direction. That actually will allow you to form an image. Is this your image of Morocco? I see this all the time. This is a typical Berber woman, Amazigh woman. And by the way, Amazigh women have always created their own art and their own jewelry for all the Amazigh people and their handicrafts. They're a remarkable culture and race, and I'm getting more and more fascinated by them the more I study them. And as I said, the Jews have been Amazigh since 200 BC. Here's another one. This might be more. Here's an Arab, what you call an Arabized Berber. So he wears a turban, but they still are. They're very colorful. They have their own jewelry, their own way of seeing life, perspectives. They're unique people. And here I want to show you the king of Morocco. He's called Commander of the Faithful, which means he defends Islam for the entire world. And he's a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. We had a talk a while ago, for those of you that have been with me for my other lectures, about another descendant of the Prophet Muhammad who's a current king, King Hussein of Jordan, exactly. So, and by the way, this is not just hyperbole. Usually they really can make a strong case for tracing their lineage. So, and this is the giant mosque in Casablanca, one of the largest mosques in the world. And again, this is creating an image in our mind of what Morocco is about. So when you see, when we visit Morocco, I hope one day together, you'll see a country that that insists Jews are always cherished. We're always loved by Morocco, and we're always a part and parcel of who a Moroccan truly is. And that's partially true. They definitely were always part of Morocco. They were there long before Islam came, hundreds of years before. They were thoroughly Moroccan and thoroughly Berber long before the Arabs and the Muslims ever came. The other part is, were they cherished? Well, they had their phases where they were definitely productive and welcome, accepted, and useful members of society with friends in the Muslim world. But they were always, once Islam came in, they would always be second-class citizens, no matter how high you can rise. And we can argue that the status goes until today, because one of the highest, perhaps the second most powerful person in Morocco is the chief advisor of the king, Andre Azoulay, who is a Jew, who is a Berber Jew. And his daughter is the cultural attaché for the UN. And Audrey was like for France, actually. So it's a very powerful, strong family, but the image of the court Jew, the idea that the Jew can only rise to a certain height before they can't climb any higher. I find that image still fascinating somehow. In Morocco, it still prevails. So the king of Morocco's Muhammad V, his grandfather actually, he in the time of the Holocaust, to show the other point of view, when Germany conquered France and it was a Vichy-run government, they insisted that to the king of Morocco that he round up his people, put them in work camps, and prepare them for deportation eventually. And he refused to do any of those things. He said the Moroccans, his longer phrase was, they are more Moroccan than the Moroccans, meaning than the Muslim Moroccans. They are my subjects. There are no Jews in Morocco, only Moroccan subjects. And not a single Moroccan Jewish life was lost. And he insisted that they've been in Morocco before the arrival of Islam, since well before the fall of Carthage, which we're going to get to in a bit. And not one, over a quarter a million Jews lived in Morocco, not one life was lost. And yet, here's the question, the big question. All the Moroccans still left Morocco. There's only 2,000 left there, if that. So why? And by the way, I'm not answering your question here. These are some ideas that people threw out there. The idea that Morocco was transforming from an independent state to a kingdom of its own. The idea that they had new ties to the Arab world. This made them uncomfortable. But the fact remains that under the kings, they'd always known security. And yet suddenly, they all picked up and left en masse, mostly for Israel, but many for France, many for Canada. In Montreal, my city, there's many, many Moroccans. And this is the mystery question that any Moroccan you speak to would love to get into with you, because there's so many different answers. And I believe, like everything, you have to know a bit of everything. You have to delve into all the different possibilities to glean a possible solution, which probably stems from all these areas. Many Moroccans today are bitter. They say the Zionists came, tempted them with this wonderful life in Morocco, in Israel, that would welcome them into the land of milk and honey, only to be placed in the most unappetizing parts of Israel by enemy states in the middle of the desert. And the Ashkenazim actually took all the plum jobs for themselves, all the sophisticated positions, and they were treated like second-class citizens, as they were perhaps in Morocco, but they say and insist, many Moroccans today, that they had it much better. So anyway, the Muslim and Arab aspect of Morocco complicates matters. But the Jews of Morocco were not typically Jewish, and nor were the majority of Moroccan Muslims typically Arab. And this brings us to the Berber question. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Okay. And what is the Berber question? Unlike the other countries, I brought this up to you briefly before, in which the Arab conquest swept, let's say Egypt, for instance, there was where there was a relatively easy transformation from who they were before Egyptians, still learning to speak Arabic, becoming Muslim. It never actually caught on all the way in Morocco, or in most of North Africa for that matter. And there was a great deal of resistance to Arab Muslim domination. It still is there today. There's a resistance to being totally overwhelmed by their language, by their culture, by their way of thinking. And you get actual groups, rebellious groups throughout the generations of the Amazigh who rise and fight against the Arabs, against the invasion. You very rarely hear this. And one of the strongest and most successful ones that I brought up to you briefly, those of you that have listened to all my lectures before, was led by a woman, probably a Jewish woman, Kahina. We're going to come to that later. So it gives rise to the question as whether the ancient Jewish communities in Berber areas are composed of Berbers who became Jews through conversion, or of Jews who became Berbers through acculturation. Do you understand the question and the problem? No, I'll say it again. The question is, you have an ancient people, let's say 400 or 500 BCE, before Common Era, who are Berber. And then you have Jews who come in and intermingle with them. The question is, did they stay so long they became Berber themselves and actually created a Berber tribe? Or did the Berbers appreciate who they were as a people and convert and become Jewish? No, just a thought. I just wanted everyone to hear and understand. Do we understand the problem or the question? And this has been studied by scholars, I guess, for generations. The predominant scholarly opinion right now is that they actually were Jewish, and we're viewing basically a long, several thousand year, period of acculturation. But we don't know, to be honest. And now the term, everyone likes to know these days because we're so politically astute and correct. Do we say Berber or do we say Amazigh? And the answer is, at the moment, you can say both without any fear, because the Amazigh themselves use Berber freely when they speak about themselves to outsiders, sometimes even among themselves. But the term itself was foisted on them by the Arabs, probably via the Koine Greek, the word Berber meaning barbarian, meaning outsider. But it's not seen as a pejorative, problematic term at the moment. If it changes, be sensitive to the climate and see if you have to change the terminology. But at the moment, I'm having traveled there quite recently and going there pretty frequently and interacting mostly with Amazigh. I think you're okay. Let's ask an Amazigh themselves to make sure. And now, what is Morocco? Since we're talking about it. So we have the Phoenicians. Who are the Phoenicians, by the way? Yes, where do they live? Eventually, yes, eventually. But of course, they lived above Israel in the area of Tyre and Sidon, Lebanon and Syria. And they of course, by being ardent traders, they gave us many, many gifts. They gave the Greeks and eventually us the gift of the alphabet. They gave King Hiram of Tyre in the 800, around 800 BCE, gave King Solomon all the cedar to build his temple with. And he also, the same King Tyre, built a colony in Carthage, in Tunisia, basically. So in other words, I hope you're understanding that our worlds are intermingling. You're not studying about Morocco. You're studying, as I said again, not to overuse the term, we're looking into a mirror to understand that. You have to understand all of these different factors to put the picture together. So we have, on one extreme, we have these Phoenicians, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs invading, right? But let's say you guys are the ones being invaded over here. You decide, you pick up the Arab mentality, you pick up the Arab way of conquest, and then you decide, as Amazigh people, it's time to do some invading of your own. And what happens is you get powerful empires like the Almohads that go back and conquer places like Spain, Andalusia. And so at the other extreme, indigenous Berber tribes found dynasties. And they conquered the territories in the Sub-Sahara, Al-Andalus. And so in other words, you can no longer speak about them as just a poor people who have who have been devastated and been consumed and been colonized, they've acculturated and adapted, and they're still Amazigh, they're still speaking their own language. Yes, they've become largely Islamicized, but they're still, they have their own nature, their own character, and they're actually carrying out some pretty devastating invasions of their own. This is a picture of Carthage. This is a port in North Africa, a mosaic you'll see there, just to give you the idea of the amount of acculturation that was happening. Then you have the Byzantine Empire in 533 AD. And you get this idea of trade. You have the North African trading with the Arab traders. And this map gives you the sense of the type of trade, the type of interaction that was going on linguistically, culturally, belonging. Think of it in terms of stories, legends. Let's see if I can play this. And this is this type of music that's called the Awash music. Can I play this or not? Let me see. I'll try. Yeah, look at that. That doesn't matter. That's okay. I took this slide myself about 2 months ago. That's one of my students over there. So in other words, with all of that, with all that cultural interaction, with all that trade, you still have a strong people, and Jewish people do this call and response dancing as well. One of these is my Kivanim student in the middle, taking a selfie, but she's not the one, you understand, it's the Berbers that are interested in taking a selfie with her. So yeah, that was my question. Can a melting pot go both ways? So in other words, we're looking, the Amazigh people, as they were being, let's say the Sephardic Jews came, they had interaction with other Jewish cultures. From the Amazigh people had ancestor worship. They worshipped their, and they went and they prayed to the spirits of their dead for intercession. And this type of tzaddik, holy person worship, righteous person worship, could be both male or female. And it's become part and parcel of Moroccan Jewry today, and arguably among mainstream Jewries now as well. This whole idea of praying at a tomb of a dead person was not part of mainstream Judaism. It started with many ways with the Berbers, adapted by the Moroccans. The Lubavitch Jews loved it. The Hasidim picked it up really fast. And and this is arguably one of the many facets that we've picked up that have carried on into our own traditions. So yeah, we talked about the Berbers. The Amazigh, the term itself means the free people. And so yeah, I think we've covered that a bit. I want to show you, these Amazigh are the people who King Hiram of Tyre would have met, traded with, and eventually settled among. And the first Jews probably followed shortly after. By the way, this other piece is from the tomb of Seti I. Seti I is the father of Ramses II. Ramses II, of course, is the pharaoh who we believe, many of us believe, was the pharaoh in the story of the Exodus. So in other words, even in this aspect, they have very strong Egyptian influence. They know them, they're trading with them. They visit back and forth. And Jews lived in both places, both in Egypt and in this world. I just want you to understand that we're not a separate entity in all the stories that are going on. Morocco itself comes from an Amazigh word, meaning Amaruk, the land of the gods. And the word Morocco also gives us the word Marrakesh, from the same root, Marek, Amaruk. And well, yeah, we got this point already. I'm not going to make it again. How are we for time? We're good. Yeah, so this one I showed you. Look at this. This isn't the Seti I. This is his tomb. Who do we have here? Who are the first three people? Typical Egyptian. You have a Canaanite, an Assyrian possibly, and next to him a Nubian from Lower Egypt or Africa. And behind them you have four people who are described as coming from North Africa. And again, see the colorful uniforms? You already have this other sense, this other style, this other way of dressing. So yeah, there we go. So again, we have the Phoenician period, which spoke about 1100 BC. And the Phoenicians begin to set up trade posts, not only in Greece, but also in the area of North Africa. And their biggest, most prized empire becomes the Carthaginian Empire. By the way, it's Karat Hadash, Carthage. It's a Semitic word. Karat means city in many Semitic languages, and Hadash is the same word in Hebrew, right? What does it mean? New, new city. So Hiram, who was friendly with King Solomon, also controlled these posts. I have a slide coming up that might make Ari laugh if I can find it. This is I had two maps to show you the trading route. One was in French, and then for those of you that don't like French, I thought I'd do the same one in English. Their network. And there was a slide I want to show. Let's see if I can find this fast. So yes, one of the interesting things about Carthage that has a very personal reference to us is that Josephus, have you all heard of Josephus Flavius, the Greek Roman historian who wrote in Greek, who is Jewish, who is actually Jewish born and raised in the land that we call Israel today. He was a general on behalf of the Jews. And the first moment he had when things were going against him, he ran up to Vespasian and said, "You're going to be the new king of the emperor one day." And when that actually happened, Vespasian pardoned him for being on the enemy side, granted him Roman citizenship, and he ended up being based in Rome, writing an incredible, bibliography and history of the Jews, of the Jewish war, and many of the stories we have today, like Masada, these descriptions of things like Carthage, the ancient world, the Jewish connection to all these worlds, including the Jewish self-perspective. The histories all come from Josephus. Where I was raised in the ultra-religious world of the yeshiva, we call him Josephus the traitor. But I guess that's because we take things personally. But what is, so Josephus Flavius says the Jews, sorry, not the Jew, to Jews. So some scholars believe that groups of Jews were present in Carthage. And what is certain is that Carthage was founded by people from Tyre. Let's go on with the argument a moment. And according to the Torah, the Bible, the city of Tyre and Sidon are part of the tribe of Asher. So you get people, this is just to show you fun. You see Tyre up on top? The kingdom of Israel. It's a Swift map. And so an interesting point, the Hebrew Bible actually never mentions Carthage. But if I tell you the Septuagint, you know what that means? It was in Alexandria, the Jews of Greece were losing their Hebrew. Like, this is a true story, I believe. And they actually commissioned a translation of the Torah into Koine Greek, into Common Greek. And the story I was told as a child was that King Ptolemy issued a decree that the Torah be translated, and that so that there be no secrets hidden from him. He had 70 different scholars placed in different places. They translated the Hebrew, and all the versions came out the same. And so we say he hid the right parts. They weren't revealed, but they were all the same version, and that's the Septuagint. But they translate Tarshish, the city of Tarshish, as Karchedon, which is the term Josephus uses for Carthage. So Tarshish is the place that Jonah goes to instead of going to Nineveh when he's told to foretell the doom if they do not repent. And he goes on he takes a ship from Jaffa and heads for this place called Tarshish. So some biblical scholars actually say that Carthage, because Josephus and others refer to the city of Tarshish as Carthage, that must have been the same place. I believe it's been, most scholars don't believe it, but I thought it would be an interesting point to throw in there for you. Or did Raphael build Carthage? Because Jews of Jerba believe, and they say, and I've spoken with them, believe that their community actually built the city of Carthage. They believe it. They say we were there before. Our communities were made up of exiles who settled there after the first destruction. This is their own story of themselves. And I don't think we should be so quick to dismiss people's oral accounts of their origins. Some people are. And they allege the Jews of Jerba aided the Phoenicians in establishing Carthage, and that many Jews settled in this new community and blended with the old original Jewish communities. So in other words, this is an actual local story told of Jerba, the Jews of Jerba, even today. So for you know about the 3 Punic Wars, I don't have to go into it. There was the Romans were, because today's discussion, in case you've forgotten the topic, it's the Jews in the different vicissitudes and the turbulent lives, the turbulent history of Morocco itself. And I want to carry you through the different versions because there were always Jews there that were picking up the different cultures. So now we've had so far, we've had Phoenicians, we've had the local Amazigh, and now we have the Romans. And of course, let's not forget about the Greeks as well. And so you have the three Punic Wars, and you have a new culture birthed because of Carthage. That's a mix of Phoenician, arguably Jewish, and Amazigh. And of course, Amazigh Jews are living in this region. And then we have what's called the Numidian Amazigh kingdom. So we have a king Massinissa who actually rises to power, and he is and when the Romans destroy Carthage, anybody know the story where Cato gets up and says Carthage must be destroyed, Carthage delendum must be, and so he finally riles up the Romans into a frenzy of military excitement and thoroughly destroys Carthage. And that's another story. I'm not giving that history. But a Numidian empire, Berber empire, is founded on the remains of Carthage, because Berbers actually helped the Romans destroy Carthage, and because of that, they received a plum prize. And now a Berber leader who was an ally of the Romans unifies and rules over all these different Amazigh tribes. He takes the disparate tribes, brings them together, and creates an independent kingdom with economic military success and power. And how many of you know the name Jugurtha? Jugurtha is a Berber grandson who has only known victory against the Romans. Just like unlike the unsuccessful Jews in their rebellion against the Rome, Jugurtha never lost any war. He kept inflicting one defeat after another until his brother-in-law betrays him, kind of like the story of Scotland. He basically sets up a situation in which the Romans are able to take him in private, and he's taken prisoner and eventually dies a prisoner in Rome. And in exchange, he gets to be named the king of Mauritania, which also included Morocco. That's Jugurtha himself. And this is kind of a Roman coin that shows Jugurtha in bonds behind that, being offered up to the Emperor Sulla. Rome gets in the way again. And then again, according to Strabo, who quoted by Josephus, we have in Libya, we have Jews living there who are thriving, who are living, who are being looked after, who are divided, who are a major part of the civilization that are growing up both Greco and Roman. And so we know several Jews of Cyrene. Jason of Cyrene, who basically wrote the second book of the Maccabees. Another Jew of Cyrene who actually is quoted as being instrumental in I guess during Jesus's crucifixion. And in 74 BC, Cyrene becomes a Roman province. So anyhow, what I'm trying to get at here is that the Romans, after conquering Jugurtha, end up founding three giant Roman provinces in North Africa: Mauritania, Valubis in the area of northern Morocco. And the Romans named them all the Maurice, which is where we get the word Moor from. So in other words, whenever we say the Moor, Othello the Moor, it's in our mind, it's somehow it comes to equal a black person. We're actually describing an Amazigh. So and there's lots of Roman frescoes of this time period that show amphitheaters, baths, Roman-style games. And why is this relevant to our discussion? Tell me. Absolute. And yet, a very strong. The answer is, thank you. It's important because we're seeing the degree of assimilation and acculturation that the Jews of Morocco are being subject to. And in turn, don't forget, it's not a melting pot. They're going out the other way too. It's going both ways. And again, if we've been looking at Islam to understand ourselves, understand why we philosophize the way we do, why we are influenced by science the way we do, as Jews, I'm saying, not as Westerners. We have to also look at the people of Morocco, the Jews of Morocco, who don't forget, were in constant engagement with the other Jews of the world. They were not on an island unto themselves. This is a very much part and parcel of who we are, and we forget this big, giant North African piece of the puzzle. So, yeah, I'm not going to went up to that. So we have, of course, the Vandals, the destroying Gibraltar. The Moors take part in the revolt, take Roman prisoners. The Moors do well no matter what. Notice the Moors were first on the side of Carthage, then they're on the side of the Romans. Then when things look bad for the Romans, they take part in the revolt and take Roman slaves and sell them, make a bit of money. And eventually, this is what I'm getting at now, the next big period of time, we have wars with the Sassanid Empire, with the Persians, and the Byzantine, the Roman grip on North Africa is weakening. And this is what allows, remember on the other end of the story, we were discussing the Islamic rise. In 632, we have Muhammad's death, and we have the next caliphates, the Umayyads, the Umayyad dynasty sweeping in and starting to conquer North Africa, or trying to. They have no problem with Egypt. They have no problem with Syria. They have no problem with Iraq, as we see with Damascus, all these different areas. In fact, they're enriched by the interaction, and they enrich the people as a reaction. It's only when they get to North Africa that things get very interesting. So the Umayyad Caliphate comes in, they create an outpost, and one of the tribes of the Berbers is definitely a Jewish tribe. It was called the Judaized tribe of the Amazigh. And the leader of this tribe was a woman named Kahina. And Kahina led for several years successful revolts against the Umayyads, against the Muslims, and pushed them out. And she won defeat after defeat. Her empire, her kingdom grew and grew. And she is seen, by the way, let's see if I have a slide of her coming up. Al-Kahina, she defeated the first wave of the Umayyad army. And for 5 years, she ruled a free Berber state in North Africa. She was eventually defeated and killed, but the Amazigh people in Morocco today that are still fighting against what they call the Muslim domination, including the King of Morocco. They want to be their own people, using their own language, using their own culture, their own dress. They use her as their emblem until today. As to the question of whether she was Jewish or not, every Moroccan Jew will tell you she was. She was definitely from a tribe that Ibn Khaldun says was Judaized, became Jewish. But that's not an argument I'm certain about at all. This is the statue of her in Algeria. Don't forget, we're speaking about North Africa. We're focusing on Morocco, but she is a hero to all the Amazigh all across North Africa, a symbol of freedom and a symbol of success. And so we have, what time are we at now? Okay, good. So we have, eventually King Kahina is killed. The country of the Moors, Morocco, is conquered annexed by the Umayyads. The Berber revolt is put down, and soldiers and Berbers begin to become truly Islamicized. They start to say, we're going to use the Islamic banner as a reason to conquer people. We want to conquer because the word of Islam has to be brought to everybody. And they create a form of Islam that did not exist in Arabia. For the first time, the Almohads start saying, you will convert or be killed. It doesn't matter whether you're Jewish or Christian. And this is a type of Islam that is actually, it was very new. It was a form of extremism that was not known before. And one of the most famous generals is named Tariq ibn Ziyad. Why did I bring up his name? Because Tariq ibn Ziyad, he ends up crossing into Spain, and he crosses a mountain. The word for mountain in Arabic is Jabal. So he crosses Jabal Tariq, the mountain of Tariq, which is where you get the word Gibraltar from. So he in 711, Jabal Tariq, I wrote there, the mountain of Tariq, and he ends up defeating the entire peninsula and creating this new world. By the way, this new concept of Andalusia, of Spain, where previously we had this Eastern Roman concept of what Spain was. Suddenly you have a very interesting Berberized, Amazigharized, and also Arabized form of geometry as art, gardens, philosophies, perfumes, you name it. It becomes what we would call very exotic and orientalized. Spain changes as a result of this invasion. And under Ferdinand and Isabella, when they send their daughter Catherine to to be married to King Henry VIII, she's really depressed because she's known this beautiful exotic world that we would describe as basically Arab in our mentality, and goes to this cold, horrid, smelly place, dank, called England, called London. So eventually, so yeah. Trying to think of what I want. Yeah. So we basically, I want to make sure I get you the major points. We're 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay, good. So yeah, I'll skip those points then. I want to get to one major point then. By the way, this is one point I want to make. The world's first university. Google this when you leave the class. It's called the University of Al-Qarain, the first acknowledged university. In the idea of what we have of what university means: courses to study philosophy, science, medicine, philosophy, was founded by a woman named Fatima. She had a large inheritance, and she used her inheritance to basically create a large mosque that was also a school. And this is the same type of school that Rambam, Maimonides, studied his medicine in as well. To become a doctor in those days, you went to a mosque university that taught you the sciences, taught you the philosophies, and to graduate, you had to show a profound knowledge of everything, of astronomy, chemistry, mathematics, medicine, and also the Quran and the Hadith. And that only after you graduated all that stuff were you allowed to put on the garb of an imam, of a scholar, and wear the hat of a scholar that represents the Quran with a tassel that represents the bookmark. Sounds familiar? Exactly. So in other words, even the concept what we have for graduation may have come from this whole concept of what it means to be a scholar. So the one last point I want to make to you before I let you ask questions. We all heard of Rambam, right? Maimonides. In 1145, Maimonides is forced to flee because as a young boy, the Almohads came to him and his family and said, "Convert or die." The big question among Jews, and I'm sure Ari's come across this before, the big question among Jews is, did he really convert? Did his family convert? And we still discuss to Islam. That's not what's, obviously he did not stay converted because he went back, he ended up writing the Guide to the Perplexed, become one of our greatest scholars who we all quote and use until today. But he did write a treatise saying that it is okay to actually convert in mouth, in word only, as long as you don't mean it in your heart. And this, in many ways, they say, was the incentive or the precedent that allowed the crypto Jews, the Marranos of Spain and Portugal, to hide their Jewishness and still believe they remained as Jews. Because in Judaism, of course, one of the main things you're not allowed to do is ever to be an apostate, to ever convert to another faith. So I thought I would and if you go to Sevilla, by the way, this beautiful tower. It still exists as a remnant of this horrible Almohad extremist society. I'm not prejudiced in any way at all. And I think that you said we have, I think I'll leave it actually at this one. We have the Conquista coming in, the Reconquista. And I think it's actually a beautiful way to end it, because I wanted to take you on a journey basically over the last few classes that culminates in another society that is not Arab, that actually not only becomes occupied, but occupies others. And as a result of this occupied and reoccupying, there's an exchange of thinking, of thoughts. If Alexander the Great with his sword brought us a Greek way of thinking, brought us philosophy and science and enlightenment, arguably, the Almohads and the Berbers and the Moroccans carry an equal part of the burden, an equal part of the responsibility, and an equal part of I would say maybe even the blame. But when next time you meet a Moroccan Jew, or you're married to one, as I am, or half Moroccan, just realize that we're dealing with this incredibly complex story that is not them and us. It's part of this world that is given rise to all of us, and they're just another branch or another mosaic piece of that puzzle that builds us up. So I'll end it with that and take some questions. Thank you.
And we're going to take questions from the audience and online. We'll start with online and we'll rotate.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Question number one.
Okay, so I was just, for the audience online, I was just saying that, am I on? That we're going to take questions from you guys online as well as the people in the audience. So the first question is, many people, and I assume like Susan Glass and other people have people in the audience been to Morocco?
Raise your hands.
Raise your hand.
Yes.
People online, have you been to Morocco? Okay. So I've been to Morocco, and I have to say the only Moroccan Jews I met were the non-Berbers. So you spent a lot of time talking about the Berbers. So the question is, the Moroccans that we meet in the city like Casablanca and so on, are they the later arrivals? Are they the Sephardim who come later in history? And then I wanted to ask people who went to visit, have you met, when you went on your trip, did you meet Berbers? And I assume Kibunim, you take them to both parts of the community. So multiple questions.
It's a great question. Number one, I find the greatest shame is that nobody thinks about the Berbers.
Should stop sharing the screen, I think.
Okay, both my, 1 second. 1 moment. Stop share.
If you're online,
you
can choose what to see. You should
Okay.
choose to see David's screen.
So I was going to say was that how many of you that were in Morocco actually interacted and knew about the Amazigh at all, or the Berbers? Everyone is yeah, one person in the audience, and I'm assuming that you get a
Online, a few people.
and the
You never met them. All through the time I was there and learned about the
right.
Asian history and things of Morocco and the Berber Jewish tribes, which I just found in trans. I've been very interested in it ever since.
So I think part of the answer lies in the fact that we live in Israel. We live in a world that's trying to find a way of finding some kind of peace agreement with our Arab neighbors. And we kind of view Morocco through this Muslim Arab prism. And the Arab world, in their own right, the Moroccan world, the king of Morocco, they see themselves as Arab and not as Moroccan. Although the king of Morocco's mother is actually Amazigh, but which is potentially one of the reasons why this renewed interest, by the way. But the actual answer is we're being controlled without realizing it. We're being told this is a Muslim country, this is a mosque. Muslims, we decorate with geometry, and you're not told this. What's this crazy intricate jewelry I'm seeing? What are these strange symbols I'm seeing everywhere? We're not being introduced to the symbol. And I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. It's easy as Wikipedia to find the answer. But if somebody doesn't point it out to you, you might not be interested, know that it's even there because the rest of it is so fascinating anyway. So that's part of the answer. The other answer is why do we not meet Berber Jews? It's because Berber Jews themselves are not aware they're Berber Jews, most of them. They're aware they speak this language from a tribe they came from in the rural areas. Perhaps there's a bit of shame when you're exposed to the outside world to know you came from a rural area, whereas other people come from a big city. There's complex reasons the language is not useful to anybody. The Berber language is not useful. The Berber culture is not really useful. It's not this whole idea of this is a beautiful thing with a great heritage. It's a very Western thought that comes with a lot of, I hate to use this word, but forgive me, privilege. With the idea that we're actually allowed to actually say, what a shame, you should speak this language. I told my mother-in-law, why don't you speak to my children in Turkish? My other half of my wife is or in Ladino. She's like, my children they just need Hebrew. In other words, that's also part of what's useful. The Amazigh no longer live. The Berber Jews no longer live in the mountains because there's nothing to do there. They've moved to the cities. So my grandfather-in-law comes from Casablanca. His family came from the Atlas Mountains. So the answer is if they don't speak Ladino or they don't have any attachment to Spain, which I'm sure the majority of the Moroccans you've met do not, they are probably Berber. Question for you?
Audience, you have a question?
Yes.
You gotta speak it to the mic.
Yeah, so you indicated that the Berbers first, or the Amazigh first came to Morocco 1184 to 1153 BCE. That's what I wrote down.
Okay.
Are they equivalent to the Phoenicians? You indicated that, at least the Phoenicians visited them.
Right.
The Phoenicians, you indicated, came about 1100.
That's right.
And what's the relationship between the Phoenicians, the Amazigh, and thirdly, the Sea People?
Right. So first of all, the Amazigh were always there. We have rock art that dates back to 20,000 years ago. So in other words, they're continuous people. The first historical means through writing. The mention that we have is this Egyptian stuff I showed you. So that's the first historical mention that we know. but they already were an established people. When you go to the Amazigh areas, you don't have these stories of invasions, of other people's taking them over. When you do excavations, you don't find examples of other peoples, other civilizations that you might. But at the moment, it seems like they are an indigenous people that have been there for tens of thousands of years. They themselves. The relationship with the Carthaginian, with Phoenicians is when they came, they were traders. When you trade, you make a good deal. It could be like the Native Americans that didn't get such a great deal with the trade and end up losing all their lands. Or it could be to the benefit of both. In the case of the Phoenicians, at first it was the benefit of both. The Amazigh helped them build their city, maybe even, as we said, Rapharam's family. And in turn, the Carthaginians gave them also a place to live. They basically a new job, like a new economy. So they boosted themselves. The relationship with the sea people are a whole different story. They bothered and irritated the hell out of the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians in that Mediterranean basin. They may have ended up founding several of the Greek cities, the polises. That's a whole different story that I won't get into right now, if that's okay.
So I'm back with online question about the Berber Jews and non-Berber Jews.
Right.
And do they get along? Is there a challenge between, or historically, did they get along? Was there a challenge between their different observances? And then there was a question about the great clothing and whether when you go there with your students, people can buy these clothes, and are the Berber Jews okay with that?
All right. So first of all, in general, if you will interview Amazigh people, the elderly, and you'll ask their memories of the Jews that lived among them, because they all left, as I said, they have generally, I don't want to generalize, very fond memories in my experience. They speak about they sing prayers, Jewish prayers, the Shema Yisrael. There's one guy named Harim who kept the key to a synagogue that looks like what you showed in your video before, a wattle and daub structure. You go inside, it has the Shema Yisrael, it has an Aron Kodesh. It apparently had a Torah that was taken out and put in the Moroccan Museum. And he guarded this key for 60 years. And only when this fellow Ralphie, Al-Malach, who's a friend and also a historian, a researcher, and a guide, stumbled upon his village, he said, "Where have you been? I've been told when the next Jew comes to give him the key." So, and when you meet, he's in his 80s now. He's a tall, I should have had pictures of him, very, very dignified. He sings from his memory, he's starting to lose his memory, he still sings the prayers in Hebrew. And very frequently, you'll get these very fond, nostalgic memories. You will also get stories of the Amazigh that were Islamicized and became very, very fundamentalist and very, very military in their approach. And so you have, just like among the Berber tribes, there were very military tribes that fought among each other, that dominated. So it depends, I guess. What was the other question? Part two? The clothing is, and jewelry and carpets are exquisite. And I encourage anybody who goes there to buy it because you're helping their economy. They're generally not well-to-do, but this stuff they produce is incredible. As long as you don't go to the schlocky tourist shops. If you actually go into the villages and you actually meet the people, you will find the most, and they're happy to share their knowledge, share the story, the history. You have to have a translator, of course, and it's a lot of fun to both interact and their dishes too, their foods, their spices. It's a different world. Nothing like what you see in the rest of Morocco. Nothing, and yet it's the majority in many ways. Yes.
One question of the Berbers today was that they were Christian, and in reading, oh, I'm sorry. First of all, thank you, because my impression until today, from any reading I've done that was about Berbers, they were Christian. Today, you mentioned Jewish. Can you discuss composition of Berbers? Are Christians a big part of it? Are Jews a big part of being Berber?
The Amazigh people were originally I guess you would say, polytheists, pagan, and they would generally, I guess, happily take on other gods or convert. But the majority of them, the majority of the Amazigh that were either indigenously Jewish, that stayed Jewish from the very beginning, since 200 BC, we can go back, or they converted to Islam. The amount of Christian Berbers, although I'll have to look into and get back into, that was not my area of study, but it's interesting. I'll find out. Yeah, but not definitely. I wouldn't say mostly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Ari.
So
Excuse me, just a moment.
For quick questions. Do you have a
It's
question?
just a comment.
Yes.
Because you mentioned, the last thing you said about the items that were made by the Berbers.
Right,
Carpets, you said carpets.
right.
And it struck me a thought when Daryl and I were trying to buy a carpet for our living room, when we just moved in. There was a real estate lady, Nesta Conroy, and she said, if you're going to get a carpet, get something called a Berber carpet.
Right.
And I never heard of that. And of course, I can't find one anywhere. But she said to me, they are indestructible. You can't light a fire and they won't go up in flames. They're gorgeous, they're beautiful, and you can't soak them in water. They're the toughest kind of carpet you can find.
Wow.
That's it. Thank you.
So David,
Yes.
question. I've been to Morocco and they do sell rugs everywhere. Are all those rugs Berber rugs, or are they a mixture of different?
The majority are Berber, and if you go into places that they actually, if you can make sure that a local woman has actually woven it on a loom, usually the older generation, the younger generation doesn't do it so much anymore. They're all Berber, Ari. You can tell right away by the symbolism. There'll be symbols that look just the same as their jewelry are interspersed and interwoven among their carpets. And yeah, I would say the majority are Berber. I don't know where else the influence come from, unless they're cheap copies from India or something, or
Thank you.
China.
Question, when you take your students to
Yeah.
Morocco, and again, maybe Susan Glass has been there, and I know she was in the Sahara because I got a picture of her
Right.
with the CSP hat in the Sahara.
Right.
Do you take the students to meet with Berbers in the communities that once had Jews so they can see what was there?
We do, yes, we do, and we also take them to Sahara as well, and it's generally, and they also take part, as I showed you in the video, with the dancing, with the Amazigh dancing, and but it's, I would say, not enough. The more I study them, the more I realize I'm doing a disservice. Every year, I get more and more. When I evaluate what I did, I say I made a mistake. We have to do this even more. This is the Morocco I'm showing them is the Morocco that the King of Morocco wants them to see, which is not a bad thing unto itself, but there still has to be something else as well. They have to actually see what Morocco truly is.
And the follow-up question was, so when you go to these Berber villages, how do you communicate with them? What languages do you have
Okay,
to
first
speak?
of all, one of these days I hope to speak Amazigh language, but they're all in school are forced to study Arabic, the younger generation, and French. Generally, they don't speak French very well, but their Arabic is okay, especially the younger generation. I can speak with them in that, or those that speak Arabic can. Although, yeah, that's a different question, because Moroccan Arabs speak an Arabic dialect called Darija, which is not at all similar to the spoken Arabic, the commonly spoken Arabic or the literary Arabic. So the reason I can communicate are those that study this literary Arabic I can speak with, only those particular ones. So I need a local typically who can translate for me.
Rabbi Linson wants to know if there's any similarity between the Sikh faith and Amazigh. I think
Yeah.
he's seen pictures and he sees there's a similarity of at least
Yeah.
how they look and carrying the knives. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that's something that you can
No,
comment on.
I don't believe there's any relationship at all with the two, none whatsoever. Yeah. Yes.
Is there a movement in Israel to reclaim the, I guess, glories of the Jewish Berber, past, or is it all assimilation and then all the cultures coming in get washed out?
Right.
Or are there people there who cherish the diversity of where Jews came from?
So as I said before, there is, because of the reception of the Jews from Arab lands into Israel, which was quite generally was the Ashkenazim dominated, the Poles, the Germans, in terms of culture, music, architecture, everything. When the Jews came from other countries, they looked down on their music, on their culture, and basically they were relegated to secondhand jobs. They were told, sure, you're Jewish, and we're glad you came to populate, but the prime jobs are not for you. It's changing slowly, but to answer your question, part of this frustration now is recently among Yemenites. I talked about this in my last lecture. Among Moroccans is a reclaiming of what it means to be an Arab Jew. The next stage, what you said, is to say I'm an Amazigh, and I'm sure that those that a Moroccan would first say I'm an Arab Jew and I've lost my identity because of Israel. That would be perhaps the first step. The second step might be saying there's a greater richness to my identity that I'd like to explore even more. I believe that would be the layers that would be probably sifted through.
We have two questions online. One is the tradition of Mimuna in the Moroccan community.
Yeah.
Where is that from? Is that Amazic or is that a completely different? Is that from the Sephardim?
Oh, that's beautiful.
And the second question is just about French citizenship for Moroccan Jews versus Berber Jews.
Right. First of all, Mimuna is a Muslim custom started by Muslim Arabs in Morocco that they prepared bread and I guess things of chametz, of leavened bread, for the Jews who just finished Passover and didn't have time to cook for themselves. So it was actually a beautiful Muslim initiative started in Morocco called Mimuna. And this became a festival now of Moroccan Jews that have taken it over and say it's our Mimuna. But initially it was actually a beautiful outreach. Does everybody understand this, or whatever I said, it doesn't make any sense? So on the last day of, would you like to explain?
Yeah, one of the, when you have to get rid of all of the hummus before Passover, you have to get rid of all of it. So the Arabs took it, their neighbors took it. And then instead of just bringing it back at the end of Passover, they would have a big party. The tables would be laid in the streets and there'd be all of these delicacies that they had baked for the Jews. And there would be a communal celebration.
Correct. Exactly right. And by the way, this was,
Look it up now. It just says like what you said, that's a Jewish celebration.
that's right. Yeah, it was not a Jewish celebration at all. It was a Muslim celebration on behalf of the Jews. And actually it was reciprocal. The Jews during Ramadan would also prepare foods for the Muslims who were breaking their fast at the end of the day. So that actually Mimuna was almost a reciprocal gift on both sides. So it was another point about Mimuna is that specifically with the organization that I was the director for, about 20 years ago, a Muslim group from Al Ikhwan University approached the Kivunim director and said, "We've founded a club called Mimuna, a Muslim club, and we want to reach out to rediscover our Jewish roots in Morocco." And they ended up being invited by Kivunim to come to Israel. They became the first delegation of Moroccans ever to come to Israel. And now Mimuna, with this new peace treaty with Israel and this new recognition, are now in charge of training tourist guides, Muslim tourist guides, to bring groups from Morocco to Israel. So their club is still very active in different universities now. They have branches everywhere, and it's called Mimuna because of this incredible history.
And so the other question online, and we have to wrap up in about 3 minutes, was just the challenge of Berber Jews getting French citizenship versus non-Berber Jews.
First of all, we talked about the Alliance Israël last class. This French organization in the 1800s that did more to answer. This actually addresses your question once more. It's a French initiative that decided that the Jews of the world, especially in North Africa and perhaps in Bulgaria and certain countries, were not being educated properly, Algeria, and they set up French schools for Jewish people in these countries. So whereas Jews always lived as regular citizens equally in every single way, suddenly they became educated in the sense of what it meant to be French educated. The curriculum, the sciences, the languages, and this in many ways separated them even more than any type of religion or culture ever could have. And as a result, like for instance, in the case of Algeria, the only people that the French would give citizenship to were those that were actually considered to be properly French, which were the Jews of Algeria, let's say. Similarly, all the Jews of Morocco, including the Berbers, had benefited from the system. So similarly, the same ones that benefited, any Jew that was allowed to have citizenship based on the French protectorate were granted it, Berber or otherwise.
Wrap it up.
Okay.
Wrap it up.
Can I share one more time or I can't? I can? I'll wrap it
I
up.
was just saying that it's time to wrap it up. So David is going to share one more item, but I don't know if it's going to happen given our sharing challenges, David.
Let me try.
So while David's looking, I wanted to thank you all for being with us today. Wow, David took us on a whirlwind tour of Morocco
join the meeting.
in a way that most of us probably have never been exposed to Morocco. So we'll be sharing this video recording as well as the first in the series and some follow-up reading material
Oh, like this, I see what you mean. Oh, I
to
see like
take with
this.
you to the beach. So
How would I
David,
do that? Can you help me drag it over? Someone do that. I don't like this dragging.
David is trying to drag something.
Someone else will
um,
drag it for me.
David, do you have outfits that you can wear that are Amazigh?
I do, and I'm very proud because it's not cultural appropriation, it's
Yeah.
cultural appreciation. So absolutely. I wear them all the time, yeah.
Well,
wanted to show you.
well, again, David should have brought some, and we should have got a picture of him in Newport
This one.
Beach, like by the Pacific Ocean wearing his outfit. So on next trip, David. We'll have
Okay,
Okay, we're
Is
trying
it
to
there?
share the screen. I see the alphabet.
yeah, but it's not up for them though.
I know, it's because it's on our screen
But
here.
they
so-
can't see it here.
No, but I can see it and our audience can see it. We still have like 150 people in the audience online.
What's that? What do you mean? Is it Chris?
So if you wanna,
What would I do?
we'll just extend the screen so that they can see it.
Can you do it? I would
He's
like them-
waiting, we're
I
just
want them to
waiting
see
to
it,
make
yeah.
sure that they can see the screen in the room. But if not, they'll have to imagine it. But it is the alphabet. There you go.
That's good. It's almost there. There you
That's
go.
good.
How would I go down now like this?
Okay.
I can't move down now.
Able to.
So here's the new Constitution 2011 recognizes Amazigh as an official language. Before that, it was only Arabic or French. And isn't that beautiful? Isn't that crazy symbols? This is the stuff you'll see on the carpets, by the way. This is the Amazigh symbol for freedom, by the way. And now there's a Tamazight channel that promotes this culture. And sometimes activists in parliament will actually deliberately speak this language. By the way, the language is lost more and more to the males, whereas the females are the ones who keep the language. Can you guess why? One reason. Why else? That's right. And who typically? Why is the Amazigh language being preserved by the women and not by the men and passed on? And the answer, yes. That's Judaism matrilineal. Okay. But one of the guesses is Judaism is matrilineal. The actual answer is that the men would have to go out and get jobs, and they have to learn how to speak Arabic or French in the regular culture, and they had no use for the Amazigh language. Whereas at home, the mothers would speak to their children, and they preserved it. And now they're in danger of losing the language, just like indigenous peoples back in North America here. I thought I was in Israel. So they're actually reintroducing it to the schools. They're teaching in their language, and they're fighting for it.
Yes, also the lullabies and stuff were in the Amazigh side.
I'm sorry, the what?
The lullabies. and
That's right.
stuff were-
They're beautiful, by the way. And the songs and the awash. You don't know how hard it is to put this lecture together because there's so much I have left out, but I hope it's whetted your interest enough to pursue it further. And this is just the teacher in the school just reintroducing it. I was part of a project in Montreal that was reintroducing Mohawk to the indigenous people there. And it was a similar system. We had the elders coming in and teaching the kids and now it's third or fourth generation and the kids they become fluent as a mother tongue. So this is what they're trying to do for the Amazigh in Morocco and all across North Africa, not just Morocco. I'll stop share there. But I thought that was.
So I
nice.
think, Dave, we have to wrap it up. We've gone overtime.
No, I'm calling it the beginning.
Okay, we've gone overtime, but it's like our tradition in reading the Torah. We spend a whole year reading it and exploring it, and then we start it all again. So you all have lots of
Gonna stop it?
new material to work with, to think about. Thank you, David, for this program. We finish our series on Sunday. So if you come next
Oops,
Thursday,
it's still on?
we won't be here.
They're still on,
But We'll
right?
be here on Sunday for our exploration of Egypt. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Great day.
Thanks, John. Okay. Thanks. Nice.
Okay, live studio audience, now you can say whatever you want because you're off.
Not yet.